Okay, YouTube, I've got a bit of a confusion with this little guy. See if you can let me work out what's going on. We have an E013 with goggles. Now these are, there's no DVR or diversity in here, we've just got a single antenna. And an E010, it's identical to an E010 with this little canopy and a 3-gram camera, VTX. Now I managed to keep it pretty light, so it does fly quite well, to be honest. With one strange funkiness I can't really get to the bottom of. Now the quad, don't think is the issue. Okay, we have one quad powered on. And then some goggles. Hold that down for a couple of seconds until we get power on. Okay, now we can let go. Just move this quad to the side for a second. Now, I don't know whether you can see that very well, but I've got a black and white image. There's kind of traces of colour, but it's black and white, and it says I'm on 4.740 gigahertz. Now any kind of auto searching doesn't really get much different, and I can go manually up and down from there and it gets worse. Whatever I do, it gets the same or worse, and I've been through every channel and it's not good. I'm just black and white with lines over. So I'll leave that. In fact, I'll do you an auto search now. Now, usually I just take off antennas to do an auto search inside, and it gets me the strongest signal because I'm just short range. But there's no change with that one either. Okay, so it actually looks a lot better on my phone through here than it does on the real screen, but I've got, it's almost like horizontal red and green lines just flickering, and the image is fairly crisp but just black and white. There's no real colour in there. So 3.732 it got that time. 3.732, 3.740, that seems to be what around it wants to auto search to. But again, like I say, pushing up or down just manually slightly. Doesn't make it any better. It's kind of the same, or it just gets way worse. Okay, so here we have a pair of good old Eachine VR D2s. Okay, now this is on 5.740 gigahertz, which is what this wants to auto search as. And I don't know if you can see or not through that. I'm getting loads of colour. It's ever so slightly out of focus, I think, this camera, but no problem with colour. Oh, stop moving that around. Yeah, I really can't get that in the screen. But you can see the coloured props at the bottom there, and the image is decent. You can see the ducts there. The image is decent, really good. So 3.740 is correct. But the stock goggles don't give me anything good. Let's just do another auto search. And I've tried this in the kitchen and a few meters away and right next to it, and without the antenna, with the antenna, with a different antenna. The antenna that I'm using, in fact I've not even got an antenna on the VRD2s at the moment, and it's all the same. I'm not getting anything better. So at that point it tells me that the goggles are faulty, or there's an issue in the goggles. Again, it looks fairly good through the phone here. There, you can see at the bottom and the side it's showing. That's all over the screen in real life. So you'd think that there was something up with the goggles there, wouldn't you? Okay, so I'm just going to leave that on for the moment, and we'll leave those goggles on. In fact, no, I'm going to turn this off because I have to. Okay, we have another trusty object of desire. This is a QX95. cracking little quad. If I turn this on, just happens to be on the same channel. I'm getting a lovely, crisp, clear, sharp picture. I mean, it's a fairly small screen in here, and I'd like it to be, feel like it was a little bit closer. Feels like it's kind of at the end of the box rather than your eyes are focused on it. But it's incredibly crisp because it's so small. There's a really, you can see the sharp edges to the draw there. No problem with the colour. Now, stock quad won't work with these goggles well, but it's kicking out a totally normal signal that is absolutely, definitely in NTSC, because this VRD2 won't pick up PAL unless you switch it. Well, it will, but it's all garbled. So I can tell just by seeing it I'm on NTSC. And this QX95 is on NTSC, slightly better frame rate. So my first thought was, maybe these only see NTSC and this is set to PAL. Okay, some logic there. Now I can't really get this out of here properly. You need to unscrew the lens or flex the frame too much to really get that out. I'm not sure. So I'm going to leave it in there. But if I hold it up from the bottom, I can press the button no problem on the bottom there. Now, I have to power this up. I'll just turn my QX95 off again. Okay, E013 is back on. Now you can see, hopefully, top right of that camera in there, there's a blue light which is stable, just solid. That's denoting NTSC PAL. So if I push that button for 5 seconds, it says. Oh, 1 second. Oh, crikey, I missed that. Let me just switch the frequency back to what I was on. Okay. We're good. Now hold it down for 5 seconds and it will give me one little flash, and then when I let go, the top right button, top right LED will flash all the time. Now that's supposedly changed between PAL and NTSC, but my VRD2 goggles, which will only pick up NTSC, still pick this up, which means that's not changed to PAL. That's definitely not changed to PAL, but my light is flashing as if it's changed to PAL. So the only thing I can tell so far is the stock quad won't work with these goggles perfectly, but the quad's kicking out a perfectly good NTSC signal. It will also, these will also view NTSC no problem. But this doesn't seem to change between PAL and NTSC in real terms. Back to the QX95. This, I know, is on NTSC. Now, if I change this, I've got dip switches on the back. And this one is pretty similar, you can see really from there. Tiny little dip switches on the back. If I raise this one on the far right hand side, I'm now in PAL. Which still shows on these goggles. Now that tells me that these goggles can pick up NTSC and PAL. So why can't I pick these up? I really don't know at the moment. Now, I'll put this video up and see if anyone can point out where I'm going wrong or what the problem is here. But for the moment, for this review, I'm going to have to fly the stock model with my VRD2s. But I will fly another brushed model with these stock goggles and see how good they are. So, on to the flying.
Okay, now I read online that a few people managed to get these goggles working by bashing them on the table. Doesn't sound great. Not something I really want to do, but we'll see how that goes after I've flown with them. Now this is the first FPV flight around my house with them, and to be honest, I wasn't surprised how this performed particularly, apart from the power to weight ratio. It's a little bit more perky than the E010 that I made with a camera on it, but I did use a 5-gram camera, not a 3-gram camera, as we've got on here, and it seems to make a huge difference. That and it's slightly smaller batteries. It seems to just be a little bit better at punching out. And the main thing is when you release a bit of throttle and then add it on as you're falling, it doesn't take forever to react. It's actually fairly responsive for at least the first 2.5-3 minutes of flight, and then after that it's possible to induce a few tiny little yaw inaccuracies, but it's perfectly usable as an FPV setup. A little bit better than I was expecting, really. Now you can see on the right hand side of the duct at the front, I've actually got a little bit of tape over there. I broke the frame on probably the second line of sight flight just around my room. Not really bashed it very hard, but it did crack. Now in its defense, I have had an E010 for as long as I can remember now, and I've never damaged the frame, and I've abused it. It's been thrown around and bashed all over the place. Everybody who could possibly want to fly it has been given a go, and it's done a sterling job. So maybe I was unlucky with the frame breaking on this, but it's not a huge deal to me. It still flies perfectly fine. If you want a new frame, they're very cheap, and the big bonus with this one is you don't have to desolder anything to be able to change the frame. You can just pop the motors out, pop the props off, and then unscrew the 2 screws to hold the board in and move it all across to another frame. So that's huge for a new pilot who's not into soldering. You can just change it, just swap it straight over, and that's quite nice. So this is the first flight here. I'd already been flying line of sight, and I throttled up, and that's what happens if your battery runs low. Now of course there's a light on the quad that will flash to tell you that you should land, but if you're flying FPV you can't see that. It's not reflected in the ducts anywhere, and you'd have to fly close to a mirror, I guess, to be able to see it. So the best thing is to time your flights. Now I've got a JGRC 150 mAh 30C battery in it now, and I'm getting considerably longer flights with it, so I'll put an entire flight on here so you can see how long you expect to get. Now as you can see, it's a perfectly viable FPV platform, but there's a few things worth pointing out that separate something basic and beta flight from something like this, and it's all about finesse. And you see as I'm traveling down the corridor here, it's a little tricky to get the yaw to smoothly start and stop. It's a little bit staccato, and that's simply just because of the spring on the sticks. I can't change any rates, and I could do with a little bit longer stick as well. It's possible to feed it in really slow, and once you're moving it's no problem speeding up or slowing it down, but it's just a little bit jerky to start and stop, and that takes a little bit of finesse off flying. With something like a QX95 or any other brush beta flight quad, it's possible, or I find it possible with a bit of practice, to be able to turn slowly as you're going through doorways and really get a finesse onto your flight. I use that word a lot, but it's huge in the FPV experience. This little thing is more suited to keeping going forward at a consistent speed and then just blasting your little turns in. It's kind of the difference between a proportional car steering and non-proportional car steering. It's maybe a little unfair to call it that, because you have got different speeds and rates with this one, but it feels like that. It feels kind of like an on or an off without some real gentle thumbs on the left stick. You can fly it with deviation, so that's definitely an option if you're serious about this, and it will transform how this thing flies in terms of finesse. Use that word again, but it really is huge. Now, as you can see here, when I leveled up to go through that door, let go of my stick to let level me up, the quad's now drifting back and left just a little bit, and the trim will drift during the flight. So when you start off nice and level, you'll need some right and some forward trim to be able to maintain a perfect level hover. It's not huge, but it is worth saying, and you wouldn't get that with a beta flight board. It's just going to sit in a hover, no problem. The other way you could get around having to actually trim it in flight is just pop it down, land somewhere, and then hold both sticks down and right just for a second. The lights will flash, and that will be reconfigured for your set level. So as long as you land somewhere level, just do that for a second, you'll be good to take off, and that's probably a little easier than actually trimming in flight. Now, one of the things I was unsure about is range with this one. I didn't think I'd be able to travel the whole house with it, But as you see here, no problems at all. The video was slightly broken up when I was in the bathroom upstairs, but there's a bunch of walls and things in the way there, and I could still see clearly to fly. So the range on this was perfectly usable. I would not expect to fly something like this further for FPV, and if you've got a still day outside, it's completely usable outside too. The camera looks far better outside than it does in a little dark dingy spot like this. But I don't want to be unfair to it by saying it lacks finesse, because I can get through little gaps with it and what have you, but I'm probably going to hit them 8 times out of 10 instead of 9 times out of 10, and it's not quite the viewable experience of something smoother. So I'm still on this battery and I'm still getting a decent amount of power on here, but you'll see when I start needing to recover some power now, it's gonna just take that little bit longer. There we go. That was the first one where I actually needed a bit more power. The only way I couldn't fly after bashing this one is if I wedged it in between 2 things like here and crashed on its nose. About 4 minutes 20 seconds here, and you get approximately another 20-30 seconds before the lights are going to flash, so that's over 4.5 minutes of totally usable power. It's quite respectable. And for all those who'd rather I just shut up and fly with some tunes, here's one for you.
So for what you pay for this, the E013 is a really superb deal. It's a cracking quad that makes it accessible for anyone who hasn't got any gear or curious that wants to try FPV. It it gives them a chance to try it cheaply, affordably, and it really does fly pretty well. Apart from the subtleties that you're going to miss if you're used to a Betaflight board, it's a perfectly good platform to get in the air and a taste of FPV. Now, to anyone who knows they enjoy FPV, I'd probably suggest a slightly better kit than this, something that allows you to grow with it rather than want to upgrade from it. But I'd like to do a giveaway with this one, so if anybody can shed a light on my exact video problem, I'd really appreciate it. I'd like to get these fixed and give them to someone who will really enjoy it. I say fixed tentatively because I can't find any model that I've got. I've tried about 7 so far that don't work with these goggles, even on the same frequency that this one won't work with the quad together. And I can't find a single FPV screen or set of goggles from any brand. I think I've tried about 5 so far that won't work with this. So it's a real quirky little problem with that one, and I expect it to be probably sorted out because it's certainly not everyone with these. So if you can lend a hand with that, I would really appreciate it. So if you like FPV, what would I suggest? Well, everyone knows I like the QX95, but basically any brushed quad with 8mm motors would generally be my choice. This still does work, but once these start to get tired, you're going to have a lot shorter life than you would off 8mm motors. Your flight time and ability to carry a little bit more weight will really improve with 8mm motors. So what I'd really like to see is an 8mm motor version of this, with some goggles with diversity and able to move the screen forward and backwards. I don't expect a DVR in something basic, but this with 8mm motors, possibly 200 milliwatts, and a set of goggles that are a bit more usable for everyone, I would say it would be an essential purchase rather than just a really perfect purchase for a starter. So, see if you can tell me what's going on with these, and we'll do a giveaway in the future. E013.